All right, let's get started. We're just a couple of minutes after. We'll probably have a number of folks joining us as we're going on, but I don't want to keep everybody waiting any longer. Respecting everybody's time. So, for those of you who don't know me, I'm Paul Osmond. I'm the CEO of Athletics Ontario, and this is our first athlete panel that we've put together. We've been holding over the course of the last 12 or 13 weeks town hall meetings with all of our coaches and clubs and officials. And we decided it was going so well that we would start creating some sessions that we could invite athletes onto and provide you with some information that you would feel relevant and helpful and of value to you. So today will be our first, but not our last. And I'd like to, first of all, introduce today's panel. Features two Team Ontario and NCAA athletes, Aurora Rynda and Liam Mather. The two athletes will share their experiences dealing with some of the disruptions caused by COVID-19, their training routine during quarantine, some preparation steps they are taking for next season, and a small look into the journey as NCAA athletes. Aurora is a Team Ontario middle distance runner who just completed her sophomore year at the University of Michigan as a member of the women's track and cross country team. In 2018, Aurora represented Canada at the Pan American U20 Championships, where she earned a silver medal in the 800 meters with a time of 2:07.78. She is the reigning indoor 600 meter champion of the Big Ten Conference, winning gold medals in the event both 2019 and 2020. Aurora is also the school record holder for this event. She was a member of the Big Ten record and school record breaking distance medley relay and was named USTF CCCA First Team All-American for the 2019 indoor team. Welcome, Aurora. Liam attended Colorado State.
That a girl.
Hey guys.
Liam attended Colorado State University as a sprint hurdler on the men's track team. Liam is a current member of Team Ontario and was a 2018 Athletics All-Ontarian. Liam is a two-time OSA champion in the senior boys 110 hurdles. He has represented Team Canada on numerous occasions, including at the 2018 IAAF World U20 Championships, where he ran a then personal best time of 13:93 for the 110 hurdle. Over the course of his early collegiate career, Liam has battled injuries, yet made his CSU debut during the 2020 indoor season at Air Force Collegiate Open, finishing fifth in the 60-meter hurdles. I'd like to also introduce Colton Kowalchuk, who is our manager of high performance and is overseeing all of our Athletics Ontario, Team Ontario athletes. And Colton is going to lead this panel discussion with Aurora and Liam. So Colton, over to you.
Thanks, Paul. As Paul mentioned, my name is Colton Kowalchuk. I'm the high performance manager here at Athletics Ontario. And I want to first and foremost give a big thank you to everyone who's joined in on this call. As Paul mentioned, this is our first athlete panel that we've hosted, and we'll hopefully be doing a bunch of these over the coming weeks. Second, I want to thank our Team Ontario members who have graciously offered to participate in this panel today. We told them they were our guinea pigs, and we'd be doing this on the fly with them, so it'll be a fun session, I think. So to respect everyone's time, well, we can jump right into it. And I think first and foremost, I want to, for all the athletes on the call, I want to discuss with Aurora and Liam just how they started in track and field. We know that everyone has their own pathway into this sport. And I think really understanding, where these two elite athletes have come from is really important. So maybe Liam, we'll start with you. How did you get into the sport?
It started mostly, I can remember back in, I think it was like 5th grade in elementary school. I actually started out as a high jumper. For numerous years, I was a high jumper. And I was just given the opportunity to compete something as little as the Thames Valley District School Board, like track and field events that went on. We went to city finals, and then eventually, as I started to get older, my mom put me in with London Legion Track, which is the club I've been with since I started. And, you know, as you just get older and older, you get exposed to bigger meets. So we would be able to go to some smaller like MTA meets and then the smaller Athletics Ontario Championships meets. And eventually I got old enough to attend or be selected for Team Ontario for my first Legion Nationals. And I think that was the turning point for what really opened up all the doors, was being able to not even just travel to a different city in Ontario, but it was traveling to a different province, was just like a next level stage, which I think really opened the door to for me believing like, you know what, this could be actually something that I could do with my life like later on. And so I definitely think that it was from the first stages in elementary school, joining a club, going to Legion Nationals, getting the exposure to competing with not just athletes in Ontario, but across the country, really helped me realize my own talent. And I think that was the big eye opener for like what got me into track in the beginning.
Nice. And Aurora, before I pass it over to you, Liam, you had mentioned there that you had kind of transitioned from being a high jumper to a hurdler. How did you find that transition? And you know, do you have any advice for any of the younger athletes on this call if they're thinking about making that switch? You know, do you have any advice for those athletes?
Yeah, so it was definitely more so like a forced transition. I got really injured with my back at a very young age. It was a horrible injury, like 3 bulging discs in my spine, and it was really it was discouraging, mostly to be told that I shouldn't high jump anymore. And it was what I really loved to do, but I had dabbled a little bit in some other events. And, you know, I took it upon myself to want to really try something else. So I tried, you know, like the mid distance group and the long distance group. And eventually I was put in contact with Sandy Cooper Ryder, my coach. And she really introduced me to the hurdles. And it's just something I really latched onto. So I didn't want to close my mind off to other events just because I loved high jump so much, because track and field is such a diverse sport. There's very different events with the field and the track. I wanted to make sure that I didn't just close my mind off to one event and like stick with that, which is the best decision I ever made, because my career has really took off with hurdling. And I think it was just really interesting to see how, like, not even because like the field events and the track events can be very different. I also noticed that there was a big correlation between the technique used in high jump and the technique used in hurdling. It's like very down to like, you know, knee drive, stuff like that. And you can really correlate it over to the track with hurdling. And I think it was awesome to be able to not have to stop at a high jump with my back injury. It was nice to be able to transition to a different event pretty seamlessly and pick it up pretty quickly.
That's fantastic. That's great. And Aurora, what about yourself? You know, your history of getting into the sport.
Yeah, so I started in grade 1, which is kind of pretty young for people. And I started because I saw my sisters do it, and they were running around, and it was just like an elementary school thing. So my mom was like, "Okay, you want to try it?" And I was like, like not really. But then I ended up doing it. And then my best friend, when I was younger, she was like, "I'm the only girl running. Can you please run with me?" So I was like, "Okay, fine." So it started off, I think a lot of kids done at beaches, and it was on that boardwalk race. It was, you know, an easy 1.5 kilometer run, and I was just having fun with my friends. And I think that's where I started. And I started in 100 meters. And so I was really not interested in anything distance wise. Like, no, thank you. I just strictly was 100 meters, 200 meters, standing long jump, all that fun stuff. And then I just kind of, you know, loved it, and I just kept going. And I wasn't winning any races. I wasn't a star athlete. I was just enjoying racing. And I remember city finals at varsity track, and I made it to the finals. And yeah, I made it come 7th, but I felt like I was on top of the world, you know, in my little chunky Asics shoes, just running down the straightaway. Like, that was just, you know, the best time of my life. And so in grade 9, I wanted to run the 200 meters. But my coach was like, "No, like, you're running the 800. And I broke down. I was like, I cannot run that. Like, that is way too long. But then I ended up doing it. I called my dad, super upset. And I ended up running, and I ran pretty well. I mean, my time wasn't superb. It wasn't extraordinary. I think it was 2:24. I was in grade 9. And so after that, I was like, okay, you know what? I kind of like this event. You know, it's hard. It's good. So then I transitioned to 800. And that's what I kept. And then I did the 400 and 800. And, you know, I just kind of kept chopping down that time. And like Liam was saying, you go to these meets and you think it's the most important meet in your life, whether it's Legions or I go to the Hershey meet. I thought that was really cool. And I got a little t-shirt, and, it's those little stepping stones. You can't just go from, city finals to a world championship race. There's all those tiny steps that you got to take. And I think Lee and I have both taken those, and we've been on a bunch of teams together representing Canada. So my first international meet was Commonwealth Youth Games. And so that was my first taste of what it takes to be an international athlete. And then from there, it goes to World Championships and then Pan Am Games. And so it's not this, huge step. You got to take this little ladder. And I think it's also to do with your teammates, because if you don't have a good team, then, you can't really stay motivated. So it's the people that surround yourself. So that's how I got started.
Fantastic. Yeah, that's really good. And I think, your story probably echoes a lot of, younger athletes who start in those shorter events and work their way up until they kind of find their niche. So that's really cool. And so, the theme of today is sort of around your development, but also, your current state. So, for Aurora and Liam, you're both in NCAA schools, and obviously as elite athletes, something you've done for such a long time, grade 1, grade 5, this has now been disrupted. So, maybe starting with you, Aurora, how have you sort of been coping, with the fact that there is no training right now, there's no competition? How has that impacted you?
Yeah, I think it's been a huge change. I first found out when I was in New Mexico, and we were literally warmed up, ready to go for nationals, and our team was, we were ready, and so our coach sat us down and said, hey, we're going to pull you guys from the race. And so that was my first taste of okay, this is weird, this is a change. And then things just kept getting canceled, and everything just got canceled. And so at first I was in disbelief, and I honestly felt like it was a dream. I kept pinching myself, hoping that, this isn't happening. And then it kind of, sunk in, and I realized this is what it's going to be like for a few months. And so I tried to keep a normal schedule. We practiced at 3, so I'd run at 3. And at that time we could still run in groups. And so there was just a group of 4 of us, and we were training together, using public tracks when we could, and especially using parks. We would go to an arboretum and just run up hills. And so we were doing as much as we could. That was our normal, because I know that in our normal training season, we'd still be doing hills. And so I was just trying to keep the schedule that, kept my mind kind of at ease. And so even though we couldn't be coached and we couldn't have our team, we'd still have team meetings, and we literally just tried to do everything we can to still have this schedule in our lives. And so it was a huge gain used to. I would still lift twice a week. And yeah, it's not the same as our lifting room, because it's amazing, but we would we have weights at home, we have a bar at home, we have med balls. And so just really using anything you got. And you can even see on social media, professional athletes are doing the same thing. They're running up ski hills, they're going to a public track and trying to get in their workouts. And yeah, it's alone, but that's what everyone's kind of doing right now. And there is no reason to be super fit right now, the peak of your season. And so I think you got to focus on the little things and focus on rehab and strengthening those areas that you really wouldn't have time in during a busy season, because as Liam knows, it is go, go, go in championship season. So having this time to focus on your glutes or focus on strengthening your calves or little areas like that to reduce injury, that's been my main priority, so that you can come back in the fall or whenever you come back running stronger than, when this whole thing happened.
Nice. That's really good. And Liam, for you, how have you stayed positive? You're just starting at a new school. How have you kind of stayed positive with everything that's happened so far?
Yeah, it's been pretty difficult for me personally, because I started my freshman year of college with a very major injury, wasn't able to compete for a full year, transferred schools on a whim, trying to get to a better environment where I feel like I could be successful. Everything was going great. Training was going great. Feeling really confident, practice before my first competition in college as a sophomore. I re-injured myself pretty badly and was out for a couple months again. So I was feeling very, very discouraged. And then my rehab went really well. I was coming back and ran my first collegiate race. It was nothing special, but it was nice to get a race under my belt. And then a couple months later, I find out that our outdoor season's completely canceled. So I was just completely in a rut. Like, I was so angry at the world. I was angry at myself. I was angry at the community. But the thing that I really focused on the most was like, I've dedicated so much of my life to be as elite as I am and as to be the best athlete that I am, and to try to go out there and not even just be like the good athlete for myself, but also encourage the younger athletes to also want to do the exact same thing. So I kind of felt like I had the pressure on myself to not allow myself to get so discouraged to the point where it would affect others as well. So I really tried to take it upon myself to think about like all the positives that can come out of what's happening right now, you know, be accountable for myself and make sure that I'm not being lazy in this time. And even though it's so easy to forget working out and training by yourself, I was taking it upon myself to make sure that I was trying to keep the same schedule, like Aurora was saying, just following what my normal day would be. So if I had practice, for example, at school on Monday, Wednesday, Friday, I'd practice at 10 a.m. And then the other 2 days of the week, it'd be 1 o'clock. On those same days, I'd be either before I came home from Colorado, I'd practice at the exact same time. And as things started slowly shutting down bit by bit, like, you know, it was first the track and then the weight room and then the rehab facilities. And then eventually I was at home. I would try to just improvise as much as possible, you know, body weight workouts in place of not having lifting facilities. And if I didn't have a track, you know, I'd go out and do stuff that I wouldn't normally do, but just to stay fit, like going on a long run, like something that is very like familiar with Aurora, but very not familiar for me. So I feel like at the same time as everything was very foreign and changing, I also was like, you know, I'm not just sitting in my bed doing nothing and not contributing to myself and others. Like, I'm actually out there really putting my foot forward and making sure that I'm putting in the work, even when, you know, like Aurora said, like, this isn't the time to be the most fit. Like, you know, you have time until the next season comes up, but you don't want to just get so far behind that it's going to be even harder to come back once the tracks reopen and practices can get back going, because it takes a lot to build a base in preseason, and it's painful and it's a lot of hard work, but it pays off in the end. And I think that is the thing that I really think of, is like, this will have a payoff, and I need to remember that. So that's kind of what's kept me positive in this whole situation.
And go ahead. Sorry, Aurora.
I think what Liam said with building a base is really important, because, you know, you're so rushed in your season. You know, you have like 1 month to build a base for cross, because if I was thinking back to last year, I would race until July, and then I'd take a big break, and then I have only August for a base. And so, like, that's a really short time. And so if you think about it now, I have June, July, and August to build this really strong base, and so that I won't be injured, touch wood, you know, in the fall or in indoor season. And that's really going to pay off. And so I think what Liam was saying about not just sitting on the couch and, you know, being a couch potato, but just seriously just getting out and going for your runs, because it's going to pay off, or doing those tiny little things like core or a little body weight circuit, because, you know, it might seem like nothing right now, but, you know, it's going to pay off in a month or two, and you're going to feel so much stronger and honestly so much better about yourself, because you don't want to look back and be like, I really wish that I took this time to be better. I really wish I took this time to fix the little things. And so it's not an ideal situation, but we've had to make the most of it right now.
Yeah, and I think also something that I thought about a lot, especially as a younger athlete coming up in, like, as I got older, you know, going from bantam to midget to youth, junior, and then now I'm a senior, something I would always think about is, obviously I looked up to older athletes, whether they be Canadian or whether they be international athletes. And I always thought, if like one day I didn't want to go to practice, I'd think, you know, let's say for at the time it was Omar McLeod, the Olympic champion for hurdling. I was like, you know, Omar McLeod doesn't get to take a day off, so why should I? Because if I want to be successful like all these big international athletes, I need to like treat myself the same. So like, I'm kind of thinking to myself the same way. I definitely think it's something that these younger athletes can think about as well, is you know, these athletes' lives. For me and Aurora, it's amazing being in the NCAA, and it's such a great experience, but it doesn't come without hard work. And I think that the younger generation needs to really recognize that you have a choice to make at these young ages, and it's not a hard choice to make. You can really dedicate yourself now and put in the work and be very like self-aware and taking it upon yourself as a younger athlete to really want to put that work in. And I think I'm just trying to like think back now and how I'm staying motivated right now to like what I thought about before is, if I want to be as good as the Olympic champion, I want to put in as much work, or I even want to put in more work than them, because I want to put myself that 1 foot forward. So I think it's really important to just look back at what got you started in the beginning when you were able to compete and correlating it in now, especially with what Aurora is saying, like being healthy, making sure you're taking the small steps to prevent injuries that could stop you from when track starts up again. Like this is the perfect time to do the little things.
And Liam, just touching on that point, you mentioned, it is a lot of hard work, and I'm sure we can all appreciate how much it takes to get to where you guys are, whether it's the NCAA or U Sports in Canada. How do you stay motivated, but internally, how do you still enjoy? Because obviously, running up and down the track 100 times a day isn't the most fun. So where do you find that enjoyment, and what keeps you kind of motivated in that sense, more so than just the, I want to be an Olympic champion?
Yeah, I think for me, something that I do to self-motivate a lot is I do like to rewatch races from the past, and not even just for my own event. Like I'm pretty good friends with Alicia Newman, so I like to talk to her a lot about her achievements and rewatching her jumps. And I think it's actually it's really funny. Something I watch when I really do not want to get up and go work out. Like I just have no motivation. I feel flat. I just want to like sleep. I rewatch her jump from the Paris Diamond League, because I don't know why, but just watching other athletes in their own respects really motivates me to like want to get up and do my own event. So I like to rewatch events for sure, but I also like to think a lot about the benefits that can come from being a professional athlete, which is obviously my goal in the end. And obviously Aurora probably has the same goal, because we can see like all the benefits that come from it for sure. I like to think about like, the benefits for myself, the benefits for the community, like being able to say like I'm a professional athlete from London, Ontario. Like that's such a big thing to be able to come back to the younger athletes in London and around Ontario as well, as be that role model. Because at this point, I'm not doing it just for myself anymore. I'm not doing it just for my family anymore. I'm doing it for the kids in my club at home. I'm doing it for the kids that are going to like Legion Nationals, that are going to AO championships, because I want to be able to come back one day when I'm not in a busy season of competing and be able to like show up at these meets and encourage these kids to want to do the exact same thing, because it's like a better life. It's better opportunities. It's opening so many more doors than just going to university and getting a degree can do. It's like having that world of track and field and that community behind it just makes it so much worthwhile. And I think thinking back on all the benefits that can come from working hard right now is definitely getting me out of bed on those hard days, or when it's pouring rain and I have no opportunity to go to an indoor track. Like that gets me out to go to the track and, do the workout that I'm supposed to do and do the small things to prevent injuries like I'm supposed to do. In the end, it's just, being very disciplined with myself to like keep that in mind and not let that that vision fade away.
Right. That's great. Yeah, and Aurora, what about yourself? What keeps the enjoyment in the sport for you? Obviously, long runs can be grueling, and on hot days, they're not the most fun. But where does that enjoyment come from for you?
Yeah, so thankfully I've had some help on my long runs, whether it's my friend biking next to me or like my other friend just running next to me. And so, but when I do need to go on, the lonely long runs, it's kind of nice just to get away and just, have that time to yourself. But I think something that motivates me the most is my team, because especially being at Michigan, it's just, stepping on that line and wearing that block M is just something that like I can't describe the feeling of. And so I just want to be able to come back in the season and be ready to fight for that. And so I think my team really motivates me, and just like a challenge, like how much better can I be coming out of this, And that's like a question you can ask yourself, like what are ways when you come out of COVID and you come back to your team and able to practice, like what can you say to them that you did for yourself and you did for them? I don't want to come back and say, oh yeah, like I did some base runs, I did a long run. No, like I want to come back and say, hey, like I crushed this tempo, and I ran up that hill 10 times, like you have to like make these little challenges, because it's just fun. And I think a huge motivation is you got to love the sport, because you spend so many hours running and jumping and doing the technique, and it all comes down to, like, if you love the sport, then you can do great things in it. And so like, you don't really want to force it. And so motivation kind of comes within, and kind of comes with the people around you, and or just like talking to your teammates about, hey, like, this is a goal I have next season, like I want this to happen, and then work towards that goal. And so I mean, that's what I've been doing. And some days it's not okay. I mean, you got ups and downs, like, and it's okay to not be okay. And but some days are really happy and it's sunny out and you're running and you're feeling fit, you're feeling happy, and those are the days that you got to cherish. So yeah.
And you know, it sounds like for those who have watched the most recent Michael Jordan documentary, one thing that Michael Jordan always did was to create little competitions. Sounds like, Aurora, you do something very similar to that to keep yourself motivated. So I'll ask you guys one more question before we get into Q&A from the audience. But you know, I just want to know kind of what's on the horizon for you guys. You know, what's up next, you know, in the next year to 18 months for you.
You want to take it away, Aurora, first? Do you want to?
Sure, I'll tap at it. I mean, there's a lot of big goals, whether it's in the NCAA. I think cross country season, it's always, you know, it's a base for me, and I want to do well in that category. But I think my main focus is indoor and outdoor. And so this year, I qualified for indoor in the 8 and DMR, but I chose the DMR. And I'm hoping, you know, we didn't get to run. And so obviously do something amazing in that category, whether it's, first qualifying, which is top 16 and top 12 for a relay, and then seeing what I can do individually. And hopefully that means, you know, first team All-American, which is top 8. And then outdoor season, obviously I want to qualify for the NCAA outdoor. And I just don't want to make like concrete goals right now. You know, I just want to see where my fitness is at. But definitely, you know, make it to the final and to see what can happen. And then
It appears she's frozen.
Oh, I think we lost Aurora there. Liam, did you want to jump in? You know, what's up next for you?
Sure, yeah. I think
in the outdoor season with each race.
Aurora, you like cut out for a little bit.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
How far did you get?
Do you want to just finish off, like, you? I think the last thing you mentioned was you don't want to make concrete goals, but you ideally want to make top 8 at outdoor nationals.
Yeah. So I don't want to say like a time yet, because you know that can be scary. But definitely top 8 outdoor, and then moving into the postseason. Obviously, there's the Olympics, and that's a huge goal for any athlete. And so that's always on the horizon and always in my mind. And then obviously there's other Team Canada events, whether it's Commonwealth or Pan Ams or those races. You just kind of want to break that barrier, and so I'm just going to try to run as fast as I can. And PBs are always huge for me, so take down a couple seconds. If I'm running 2:04 right now, let's see if I can run 2:02. Or if I'm running especially in relays, let's try to bring down that split. And so just little goals like that are definitely a huge goal for me.
Nice. And Liam, what about yourself?
I think the biggest thing for me right now, that I'm just taking it day by day when it comes to my achievements, because I have been out of the sport competitively for a while. I did come back last outdoor season and compete. It was by no means my best effort, but I just didn't want to allow myself to not be back in the track as quickly as possible. But with that being said, and with my new injury that I've just a couple months ago was finally cleared out of, I think the biggest thing I want to do with myself right now is get myself back to where I was before, because I know I'm capable of it. But definitely battling an injury and coming back on the other end of it can be a very daunting experience. I want to just make sure that I'm not putting too much pressure on myself to be absolutely amazing right now, because I know it takes time to come back from something that puts you out for so long. But I definitely do still have goals for myself, because I know I can push myself to come back stronger than I was before. So obviously, I want to represent my school the most I can. They've put a lot of faith into me this year. Obviously, I want to make indoor nationals. I want to make outdoor nationals. It's always fun being that top percentile of the NCAA. It's truly I don't think people truly understand what it means for Aurora to be able to make the indoor nationals, and not just one but two events, because they always say only the top 1% of track athletes in the NCAA make the indoor nationals, because it's such a cutthroat entry. And I think people really need to understand that was some real hard work on Aurora's part, and she was able to accomplish that. And that's something I really want to accomplish for myself, because I know I'm more than capable of it. But then obviously, outdoor nationals and then postseason, it's always the most, school is very important to me, but at the end of the day, I always want to represent Canada. I want to put the maple leaf on my chest, and those postseason events, whether it be the Olympics, which I think are very obtainable. I'm 20 years old, so I'm kind of at that beginning of my peak age those next 4 to 5 years. And whether it not be the Olympics, thanks, Aurora. Whether it not be the Olympics, there's other opportunities. There's Commonwealth Games, Pan American Games. There's the University Games and World Indoor Championships, which were recently postponed. There's a lot of opportunities. I just want to be able to represent my country on the world stage, which I think is ultimately why a lot of us do it.
That's fantastic. Great. So that kind of concludes my questions that I had for the athletes. But I think now would be a really good time to open it up to some of the younger athletes and coaches who are on the call, because I think, I can't possibly ask you guys everything. So why don't we open it up now to some questions? Feel free to type in the chat, or you can unmute yourself and ask some questions. So feel free to go ahead if anyone has anything now.
I'll jump in, Colton. It's John, Aurora, and Liam. I got a question. So during this period of lockdown, you're working out at home. How often have you heard from your university coaches?
Personally, I reach out to my coach a lot, and he reaches out to me. I talk to him maybe, probably if I was just a ballpark it, 3 to 4 times a week. He's sending us weekly workouts to begin with, but then he also reaches out. He's asking me how are you feeling? Any new injuries? How did that workout go? What were your splits? What was your pace? And also he reaches out just asking me if I'm staying sane, if, I'm keeping myself busy. I remember a couple weeks ago, he challenged the entire sprint hurdle group to find a new hobby or a skill. So he was constantly reaching out to us, asking us about, what's our progression? How are we doing with that? So it's really nice having a coach that doesn't just care about us as athletes. He's also making sure that we're mentally healthy, which I really respect from him. It's just nice having that support.
So when I was in Ann Arbor, I would probably, honestly, I think I talked to him almost every day. It was super easy. He would almost kind of, drive by the neighborhood sometimes, and I'd just be in my house. If we were on a run, he would just see us there. And so I've been in contact a lot with him, and also with our strength and conditioning coaches. They've been sending us voluntary workouts, and so I've been doing those twice a week. And then also we have our sports psych, and so I just kind of been talking to the whole group of coaches, and so I'd say at least once a day I'm talking to some sort of coach, whether it's my trainer, and we have a weekly meeting with our whole team, and we go through self-therapy things, because as an athlete you really need to get your calves rolled out, and it's just so crucial for someone to be there and just help me massage them. And so because we don't have that, she's been teaching us over Zoom how to do it ourselves. And so and I also took a break, and so I'm starting to get back into running. And so I go to my coach and I say, hey, this is what my miles have been at, and we kind of work through our next week. And so taking it week by week, and they just been sending us a lot of information, whether it's core or little body workouts, and making sure, like Liam said, you have a hobby. So I've been doing a whole lot of Pilates recently, and I would never have done that, if I was in season. But it's something I definitely put into my schedule, and a lot of us put into our schedule. So definitely keep in touch with my coaches.
Nice. Any other questions? I don't see any in the chat as of right now, but maybe while they come through, Aurora, I'll touch on something that you had just mentioned there. You know, using Zoom, we're obviously using Zoom right now for this, but you know, how have you both found that technology has influenced the way you're training, you know, now that there's social distancing in place?
Yeah, so you definitely gotta be careful of that. We're told, you know, if you are gonna work out in groups, make sure you're social distance. So if you can imagine a track, like one person's in lane 1 and one person's in lane 3. That's kind of like what you have to work out in when, you know, COVID was a huge deal. I think back in like March or May, it was like really strict. And so that was something you were dealing with. And technology has helped with communication. And I mean, our team is scattered across America and I'm in Canada. And so it's really nice, you know, to see the faces in California and just say, hey, like, what are you doing? And everyone's been getting puppies. So we just show our little puppies on the screen. And so, you know, we're just trying to stay in contact as much as possible.
Nice. Nice. And Liam, what about for yourself?
You know, it's difficult because I'm very envious of Aurora because a lot of her training can just be without any sort of equipment. So obviously my training is very reliant on being able to do hurdle technique and, you know, actually running physically over hurdles as much as the base running is very important. So it's nice to be able to have contact with all the members of my training team, whether it be my physical therapist, my coach, my lifting coach, and my sports psych, being able to communicate with them, not in person, about different ways that I can get around. You know, if, let's say I don't have hurdles to do hurdle mobility, like what are some other ways that I can get around that and like brainstorm ideas with them at the same time, like what I can do in replacement of that. So it's really good to be able to not just like talk to them, but also be able to see them. So like using Zoom or FaceTime, being able to still have my weekly academic advising meetings with my academic advisor, being able to meet with my tutors when classes were still going. It made the world of difference. And I think Zoom is like a very valuable platform to be able to like have that group conversation with not just one person. And it's made life a lot easier not being there to see them in person, I think.
So I got asked a question over chat, and I don't know if people can make it to everyone, but it was, what's my mileage as a mid-distance athlete in my long run? And so I was just going to answer it maybe just to everyone, which might be helpful. But I'm a pretty low mileage runner. I run about 35 to 40 miles a week. And I think, I don't know, might have to convert that to kilometers, sorry guys. But, and my long runs are about 9 miles. So when I first came into college, I think my long run was about 6.5 miles. It was really short compared to everyone else. And over the year, I brought it up to 8. And I wanted to do that slowly because I know that you can get really injured if you just bump up your mileage. And then in my sophomore year, I went from 8 to 9. And so I think eventually I want to work up to 10 miles for my long run and keep it around 40 miles a week. But that's what I've been doing. And my base runs are normally 5 miles. And so that's, what is that, 8 kilometers-ish?
Yeah, roughly.
Yeah, so that's what I've been doing. And I think it works. And I like it.
And we just got a question in from Scott McDonald via the chat. You know, he asked, what would you tell young athletes about the transition for student athletes from high school to the university level? So be that U Sports or the NCAA.
Yeah. I think when I think about this question, I want to say that I wish I had more of an idea of what it would have truly been like before going into it. It might sound daunting, but it's very intense. And it's something that everyone should be prepared for. I don't think it should be sugarcoated at all. I think it's a very big life decision to go that next step, because once you transition from high school to university, it's not just high school university, it's like club to elite. And it's some people, I personally at the beginning, I couldn't handle it, but I found a way to handle it, and I found a way to understand it and be able to cope with the harder workouts, the bigger training loads, the the intense competition. And I think, you know, in Ontario, I'm talking from an NCAA standpoint, of course, and I'm assuming U Sports is very similar because they are also very high performance Canadian athletes as well that do make those big international competitions. Being able to mentally compare yourself with the caliber that's in the leagues. So for example, my first year, I was in the Big Ten, like Aurora, and I was seeing some of the athletes competing there, and it was very difficult to wrap my head around, like, oh my gosh, like I have to put myself on the line with these people. And that can be very mentally daunting. But I think if you take the time to do the self-mental work and think a lot about, like, you know, just because I came from here running this time and I'm here now doesn't mean that I can't be on the same caliber as them. And I think that was a big thing that I had to work on a lot, especially getting injured my first year, was just allowing myself to believe that I was just as good as these people. And also to be able to like go every day to practice and not be terrified of my workout, because sometimes they were really hard, but it takes really hard work to be really good. And I think anybody's capable of it. It's just, you have to really be fully invested on all other levels than just athletics.
And Scott, I may elaborate on your question a little bit. I hope you don't mind. But for Aurora, you know, how have you seen the transition of that balance between school and you know, workouts? Because obviously you're a student athlete. You know, we put first for reasons. Or how have you seen that transition?
I think I was originally at University of Toronto Track Club, and I think the training was really similar, and so that kind of helped me transition into Michigan because the training was almost parallel. And so with my schoolwork, obviously university has a harder school load, but it's just about managing your time. And so, you know, you're given freshman year, and you have to do 10 hours of studying a week. And so we were basically like, you know, forced to go in the study hall and study. And so that kind of forced me to create these really good habits of, okay, I'm going to go to school from 9 to 3. I'm going to practice from 3 to 6 around then, and then I'm going to eat dinner and I'm going to study. And then within the day, you also have blocks to study. And so you also have to realize that being, you know, a student athlete, you can't have everything. You can't have a social life to the max like a normal college kid. And so that's something you kind of have to sacrifice, because yes, you can still have fun. You can definitely have fun, but you also need to realize that if you want to be a really good athlete, you need to, you know, get your grades as high as you can, and you have to come to the track ready to practice. And so that's good sleep and all that. And so you can't have the best of every world, if you know what I mean, right? And also I think, tapping on what Liam said about like big names when you compete, I think it's also important to not put people on pedestals, because, you know, you can step on that line and be like, this person's really good, and then you basically lost the race. And so kind of going in with a mindset that, you know, anyone could win, I think that's really been helpful for me, because, you know, you're there for a reason and your coach trains you. And so you just have to trust that process. And I think that's really helped me mentally overcome, you know, the big names on that track, because one day it could be you, you know, one day you might be that person that everyone's like, wow, you know, she's really good, or he's really good at jumping. And so just don't psych yourself out, because you know, you're there for a reason and you train hard.
And I'm sure, you know, eventually when some of the athletes on the call today line up against you guys, they'll be feeling that way. So hopefully you didn't give them advice to beat you guys.
Yeah.
I mean, it's always the trend. You always end up eventually the younger kids in the generation that start coming up as you're near your prime, and older athletes start getting older and the younger athletes start getting older. The younger athletes start beating the older athletes. So one day it'll be them.
Yeah. I have a few questions in chat. So Liam, you can answer them, and or I'll go after you, but it's, what is a day in your life while you're at school? Oh, is that what you asked, Colton? How do you balance school and training?
A little bit with school, but yeah, maybe a day in the life. And then I've also got a question from Sue Bartol. So yeah, Liam, I'll let you go for that one first.
Sure. You know, day in the life, definitely it's difficult because we have practice blocks that you have to fit your class schedule around. So oftentimes you don't really get the option to not have an 8 a.m. class or a 9 a.m. class. So it's definitely early mornings. Wake up early, eat a really healthy breakfast because you don't want to be hungry at practice. You don't want to not be fueled up for practice. For me, at least, my practices tend to be in the morning before or after one class. So let's say if it's a Monday, I'll have class at 8 a.m., practice at 10 a.m. We practice for about 2.5 hours in total. I'll leave an hour for rehab. So I'll roll out, see the athletic trainers, and then that's about 3.5 hours there. And then it's around lunchtime. I'll bike home to my apartment. I'll eat some lunch. I like to meal prep at the beginning of the week. So on Sundays, I'll decide something before I go grocery shopping. I'll pick something that I want to make for the whole week for lunches and then dinners, because I generally don't really have time to cook all too much. I'll make something that I can easily microwave that's healthy, full of protein, fiber, healthy carbs, healthy fats. I will have lunch, and then generally I'll have another class or two and maybe a lab. I'll go do those. I'm generally done class around 4:35, depends on my schedule. By then, I will take myself to a coffee shop or something because I personally can't study in my room or at my apartment. I'll do homework for about 2 to 3 hours, being smart not to overdo it, making sure I'm stringing out my time for big things like exams. I won't try to cram it all at once, because that just makes you more tired. It stops the absorption of information. So I'm really smart with how I study. I always, like around midday, I'll create a schedule for the next day. So I'll outline my times, like what I have to do when I have free time. Generally when I'm done studying is around 7 or 8 o'clock, depending on if I have a night class. I'll take some time for some self-care. So what I'll generally do is I'll shower. Sometimes I like to put a face mask on, or I like to put on a movie, hang out. Sometimes I'll see friends just to have a little bit of a normal life for a little bit. And then I generally like to be in bed around 10:30 because it's another early morning the day after. But I definitely think that it seems very unobtainable because it's such early mornings all the time and you're not constantly on the go. But if you're very smart to make sure you're in bed early and you're getting a full 8 to 9 hours a night, it makes it not that hard. And it's it's a lot more obtainable than meets the eye. But it's also, I just love it. I love how constantly on the go I am. So yeah.
And I think also your whole team's going through that. Everyone's got to wake up at 6 to lift, and so it's not like you rolling out of bed alone to go lift in the dark. Everyone is scrambling around the house early in the morning. It's just a really good time. It's fun, and you look back and you're like, wow, that was a good season.
Yeah. And then I remember at Iowa we had morning weights too, so I know exactly what that's like. Thank God I don't have morning weights now, but I definitely know what it's like to scramble around with your roommates in the morning.
Yeah.
And I'll complain about the same thing.
Yeah, or when I was a freshman, we would race to the car to try to get to the car the earliest so we could get to the track the earliest. And so that's another little challenge. It's just, you're surrounded by people that love to do the same thing you do. And so that just makes it so much better. And sure. I got a question asking some workouts that I've been doing. And I guess I can do it for mid-distance, and Liam, you could say what you've been doing for hurdles. But for me, I've been doing tempos. And so before my break, I would do 10, 6, 4, which is 10 minutes, 6 minutes, 4 minutes, and then some 200s at the end. Or I would do 3 sets of 4x200. That's another big workout that we've been doing. Or I would do hills, and so the hill's about 400 meters, and I would do 2 sets of 4. And then as I went through the weeks, I would end up doing 2 sets of 5, or 2 sets of 4, and then 2 fast ones at the end, and then 3 strides in between. So those have been kind of the workouts I've been leaning towards, are cruise miles. So that's you do 4 times a mile at around 5:40. You can start there and work your way down. So those have been some workouts I've been doing. I'm not really sure if that helps anyone, but yeah.
And for me specifically, me and my coach have a very interesting kind of standpoint for how we train me. The way I do it is 3 days of the week, it'll be a different type of workout. And then the days that I'm not doing that specific workout, it's my active recovery workout. So I'll generally start the week with my 10 tempo day. So something like that that's more of an endurance day. So I'll do something. Depending on if I'm doing a load week or a decline week, I'll do something like a 1-2-1-3 times 3 sets with like 100-meter walks between. So 100-meter, 200-meter, 100-meter, 300-meter. 3 sets of that at like 75-85% pace. So it's getting your heart rate going. It's really working on my speed endurance. And then after that, I'll take like a recovery day. So I'll do something like an active warm up and then maybe just like strides. And then I focus a lot on like stretching, active stretching, making sure you're just doing, like we talked before, the little things to prevent injuries. And I'll generally just do a lot of core work, a lot of like upper body, like body weight workouts to help with like my upper body strength. And then I'll go towards a speed day. So that day I'll spike up. Generally, when we're in season, our speed day we'll have 2 speed days a week. So it'll be over hurdles generally, whether it be a hurdle tempo day or it be a speed hurdle day. But for right now, since I don't have hurdles, I generally just do, some days I do resistance sprints. So I'll have a parachute, or if I have access to a belt with weights, I'll do that, or it'll just be like a flat speed day if I'm trying to hit max velocity. Depends on like what that week my coach is trying to get at. And then I'll do another active recovery day, focus on a different part of my body for strength, but still focusing on, getting your body moving, strides, getting your heart rate up, getting loose. And then I'll do something like kind of like I end my week with a load. So something along the lines of like a speed endurance. So I'll do like hills, like sets of certain hill runs. Depends on, there's a couple different options in London that I have for hills, but whether I want it to be a longer, more less incline or a shorter, higher incline depends on what I'm trying to get from the workout. But that's mostly what I've been doing right now. And then just taking the weekends to really focus on self-care for my body. I like to do a lot of yoga. It helps a lot with, especially being a hurdler, we destroy our hips with our trail leg. So I like to focus a lot on just the little things and making sure my body's staying as in tune as I need it to be, because this is the time to take all the time. We have all the time in the world right now. We are not doing anything. We are staying at home. It is COVID. So I have all the time in the world to just make sure that I am doing everything I need to do when it comes to keeping my muscles and my joints safe. So
nice. And so I've got 2 questions here, and I think we'll probably, we're getting close to 2 o'clock, so we'll give you each about 2 minutes. The first one's from Sue Bartol for Liam. So Sue says, Liam, congratulations on your accomplishments. Just wondering what types of treatments you've had for the 3 bulging discs. That's quite a return.
Yes. So that was a long time ago, actually. I was in high school, early high school. But I was told in the beginning stages, I was told by 3 separate doctors, 2 of which were surgeons, that I should stop. Like I should just stop. They're unoperable. You're too young for this kind of stuff to be happening. Just stop, which was very discouraging. But I actually have a really good friend of mine. He's a very well-known physical therapist in London, private physical therapist. He did a lot of, I'm trying to remember what he did, but it wasn't so much like focusing generally on the injury itself. It was strengthening everything around it to take the pressure off my back. And we found out at that time I was very, very thin. I was very skinny. And I didn't have a lot of like the muscle that came with puberty and growing up and working out more. And I noticed that I could really take the pressure off my back with strengthening my core and everything around it. So that's kind of what we focused on. At the same time, he would do a lot of, like, let's say he would readjust my hips to make sure that I'm not putting too much pressure on one side, which would aggravate my back. And he would make sure my tailbone, I don't know, I forget what the bone and joint and everything's called down there, but like he would take my tailbone and make sure he puts it back into place, because sometimes when I'm running, I would arch too much, putting pressure on my back, and it would kind of slip it out of place. So it was like the making sure everything's in the right spot, but also making sure that everything around it is strong.
Nice. And second question, and I'll gear this one towards Aurora. How do you handle training in the heat, especially the transition when it first starts getting hot out and you're not used to it? And Aurora, I'll add there, I would imagine this is particularly relevant for both of you, flying to different parts of the country for competition where, Colorado, Michigan may be fairly cool, but if you're down in Arizona or Florida, it may be a quick transition to that heat. So that one's from Sarah O'Sullivan and Aurora. How do you handle that transition?
I think water, and electrolytes. The main thing you can say. We were in Jacksonville, Florida for the NCAA's last year. We were drinking like 100 ounces of water a day, just trying to prepare. And so, so you're just chugging water. And even if you're going on a run today, I really just think, just staying cool, just putting like a cold towel on your face or on your chest, that always helped me. And then if you're preparing for races, I would just sit under a tent. They'd have a nice tent for us and just sit with ice blankets on you and just waiting to warm up. And then, cutting down your warm up, because if it's, 30 degrees outside, you don't need to do a 15-minute warm up, cut it down to 12 minutes. It's not going to kill you. It'll just help you in the long run. And so just being aware that your muscles are already really warm when it's hot out. And so you don't have to do, your full warm up. You can cut it down like 15 minutes. And so just water, make sure you hydrate after. I'm a huge fan of Pedialyte. I'm sure a lot of people are. And so I chug that. So I go, a bottle of Pedialyte, a bottle of water. And so I actually got Pedialyte popsicles. So that's what I'm into right now. Yeah, it's really good.
That's a thing.
Yeah. So,
sheesh, okay.
Yeah. So just, drinking that, and that's what I've been doing.
Great. Okay, and one last one word answer or couple word answer from Ben Kong. Do you plan on running as masters when you get to 30 years old? Because they can race, you can race us old people.
If my body won't break, yes.
I'm in the same boat. If my body can handle it, yes. I'm already going through some stuff right now with my body, and if it can hold up, by all means.
Yeah, if I can run at 80 years old, I will do it. But I don't want to get every hip replacement. So
it's a lifelong endeavor. That's great. Well, with respect to everyone's time, we'll conclude the questions now. I want to say thank you to everyone who's joined in on the call to listen. Aurora and Liam, we thank you very much for providing some insight into your daily training as elite athletes. And I also want to give a special shout out to the Canadian Sport Institute Ontario, who has supported this program for the past 10 years and continues to do so. So big shout out to them for participating. We do plan on hosting these sessions now moving forward. So if anyone has any new topics they're interested in listening to, things like that, please feel free to shoot me an email. But thank you again to everyone, and we'll chat next week. So thanks,
One
guys.
last thing before everyone goes. I'm sure Aurora is in the same boat, but if anyone has any other questions that didn't get answered today, my Instagram DMs are open. I'll be checking them if anyone has any questions. I'm sure Aurora will do the same thing, but
yeah, we can
feel free to
in the
ask any
chat or
questions.
something.
For sure.
Yeah, like Aurora, just put your Instagram in the chat, and
yeah, I'll go ahead and do that too.
Fantastic.
And to all the Michigan fans, always go blue.
Go Rams, baby.
Nah. It's always a rivalry.
It's always.
Okay, thanks guys. Everyone have a fantastic afternoon.
Thank you.
Bye, guys.
Bye,
Thank
everyone.
you.
Bye.